In this video, I'd like to review our use of index match for calculating taxes due on taxable income. In Module 1, we spent most of our time formatting this form, and then we spent some time on the math, adding lines and so forth. By the time we got to the tax calculations, it was pretty much provided for you, and I think it was more of a memorization exercise. Now that we've learned index match, I'd like to revisit this. So if we have the 1040 form, where we're making some wages, earning some interest and dividends and so forth, maybe taking off some deductions, we get down to line 10 with a taxable income. I'd like to be able to calculate the tax from the tax tables. And in fact, instead of formatting this sheet, what I'd like to be able to do is look at multiple years at once. So for example, if I could see what I were doing in 2018 with some wages and some interest and some dividends, adding up to some total income, taking off a deduction, and getting to a taxable income, and compare that to 2019 and maybe even what I project in 2020, it'd be nice to be able to do all in one column the calculations to get from taxable income to tax. And that is the purpose of this video, is to do the index match to get from taxable income to tax. Recall that in the 1040 instructions, there's a tax table near the back that shows these tax rate tables saying if your taxable income is over some amount but not over another, then how to calculate the tax. If we look at that in Excel, it looks like this. And what I'd like to do in this video is focus just on the single filing status. So I'm going to come over to this screen. And let's see if we can make that calculation. If we know what our taxable income is, then we'd like to be able to calculate the tax that corresponds to that taxable income. And we know we need to look at that income and decide which row we need to be on this table. You may even recall from Module 1 that we use the match function to do that. So if I knew that I wanted to be on the third row of the table, because 50 is over 38 and not over 82, and I started with just a match. Now lately we've been using match with 0 to get an exact match, but I hope it doesn't find an exact match for 50 on there. It gives me an error. If I leave the 0 off, or if I put a 1 instead of a 0, then it happens to tell me that you want to be on the third row of that table. So that's good to know. So if I'm trying to calculate the tax, and I were able to populate these 3 cells using index match, then I could come in here and say that the tax is equal to, didn't populate that one correctly, did I? To populate these 3 cells, I'll use index match to get the 4453. And so I'll come back in a moment and use index match for these other 2. But then to calculate the tax, I could say that my tax is 4453 plus this percentage times the amount of taxable income over this amount. If you're not super comfortable with that formula, please hit pause and review that. Now all we need to do is make all 3 of these dynamic with an index match. So I think I can do that by copying. I'm going to leave the match column A with absolute references, and then let the index just reach down to the column beneath it for the next 3. Copy, paste formula, paste formula. Now if we change our income to 100,000, we're looking at the 4th row and pulling off the 14,000, the 24%, and the 82.5. And so now our tax is 18,000. So these are the calculations we did in Module 1. If you remember them, great. If you needed this review, then I hope it helped. The challenge now is to put all this into a single column so that we can do these calculations for the tax tables specific to each year below the year of those tax of that 1040 input and output. We need different tax tables for each year because the tax rates change from year to year. either because the laws change or the laws have built in increasing taxes or decreasing taxes. So you can tell that the 12% tax bracket used to start at 9525, now it starts at 9700, and so on. Who knows what it will be next year? We could make some estimates, or we could maybe get out on the internet and find out. Again, the challenge is to get this tax calculation, which we just did, looking at things only in one column. And so I'm going to copy this because I like the format of that. And I'm going to paste it right here, widen that. And so we've got these formulas that we could put into one column. Now if I look at where these formulas are looking, I can just refer them to the same numbers in the single column. And this is something we can use on our simple tax model over there. So for a certain taxable income, we know the tax is some value plus a percent of the amount over that threshold, and we calculate the tax. And then we don't need any of the rest of this table. We're still getting our correct calculations all in one column. I would like you to take a moment to think about the advantages of index match over VLOOKUP. You can imagine that we could have rearranged this table to use VLOOKUP. In fact, I don't think we would have had to rearrange it. We could have done it the same way by looking at comparing our income to the leftmost column. Had we done that, we would have had no chance whatsoever of putting all this in one column. So for practice, why don't you take this simple tax model problem, and I've posted the solution as usual, and see if you can calculate the yellow cells. And so the tax is this first portion, the first part of the tax, plus some percent of the amount over the bottom of your tax bracket, your income threshold. And these are what those numbers should look like.